I wish I was more comfortable with this.
Well, there's a select few group of people that probably are, and then there's the rest of us who are normal.
They're called actors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think we're live. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Rolczynski, founder of Dudes with Dogs and Chaps with Cats. And today we're talking with the founder and CEO of Eusoh. It's spelled E-U-S-O-H, pronounced Eusoh, and it's an alternative to pet insurance. I think the way that they talk about it is it's the affordable cooperative pet health plan. So we'll talk about that probably over the next hour or so. This might go kind of a ways because I really want to dig into this. So let me introduce real quick. I've got Allen Kamrava. Go ahead and say hi.
Hey guys, how are you? Glad to be here. Thanks for having us, Chris.
And then also on the line, we also have Ari Simon, Director of Operations for Eusoh. I think he's not on video, but maybe we'll get him on at some point. Are you on there yet, Ari?
Ari, you want to be on video? He says no.
Oh, he says no. Okay, no worries. So if you're watching live, please say hi in the comments. Put a number 1 if you're watching live, and put your first name and where you're viewing from. If you're watching the recording, put a number 2, and also put your name and where you're watching from. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. We're trying to customize our URL, and we can't do it until we have enough subscribers. So that would be helpful. So a little bit of history first. So again, my name is Chris Rolczynski, founder of Dudes with Dogs and Chaps with Cats. I started Dudes with Dogs in 2014, and I won't give the whole story, but basically what we are is a community of LGBT plus dog lovers and cat lovers on Facebook. We have 84, almost 85,000 people. We've got a new platform now on Mighty Networks with almost 3,000 people. And then also Chaps with Cats is 6,800, and that's totally picked up recently. So I guess from the beginning, we've always had this issue of pet health. You know, from the beginning, I would have people who would post in the group, and they would try to get people to pay for their surgeries that were unplanned. You know, and I had to decide as a community owner, like, is that something that I wanted to condone or promote? And so we've never really, we've always tried to, I as the host of, you know, or leader of these communities, I've always tried to promote the correct fiscal management or having a financial plan for your pet, because pets can be very expensive. You know, they can be cheap, but they can be very expensive if you've got, you know, unplanned illnesses or ailments, or you're choosing breeds of animals who tend to get sick. And so I've always promoted having some sort of financial plan. And now I realize that can look really different based on whether, you know, you're financially well off yourself. A lot of people say, oh, pet insurance is a ripoff. The best thing to do is just, you know, save that same amount of money in a savings account, which is, I guess, fine if it's been a few years of building that up. But what happens if something happens right away or within 2 months? And then also the thing is most people aren't that financially savvy or aren't that disciplined, right? So if you're saving that money, you know, you still have a decision to make if you've got an older dog, whether to use that money, and it puts you in a quandary. And then the other option is pet insurance. You know, and I can speak to this personally because, you know, I had pet insurance. I had Pets Best for a while. I had FIGO for a while. Pet insurance is great, but it's pretty expensive. I think I was paying, this was with a puppy, I was paying $45 a month. And it goes up from there if you have a bigger dog or an older dog or a dog with, you know, some sort of complications. And I think the proof is in the pudding, in that, you know, I think the rate, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but I think the rates nationally are that pet insurance, it only has like a 2 or 3% take rate, which if you're, I mean, if you just look at that, then something is wrong with that product. You know, people literally aren't buying it. So we're caught in between the two, between this pet insurance, which costs a lot, you know, and will cover lots of things, but it, you know, people aren't picking it up. And then the people that just kind of try to wing it and, you know, try to get their friends and family or strangers to pay for unexpected health problems through a GoFundMe. Now, we certainly don't condone GoFundMes, but I think that what's important about the whole concept of a GoFundMe is that people are open to this sharing economy. You know, people are open to having their friends and family help out when there's a problem. So that's where we're at. I found out about Eusoh just a couple months ago and was immediately excited, not just for our communities, but for myself, because I've been looking for something for Frankie. I think she's.
Oh no. Is it just me? Okay, so I guess Chris' computer froze. I'll go forward until I think he comes back on. I'm put as the host. And I'm hoping our IT staff will tell us. Welcome all. This is my first kind of live Facebook, and so I apologize in advance for any part where it just seems like I'm not a natural at this, because I'm not. But yeah, so Allen Kamrava, I'm the founder of Eusoh. Quick kind of little backstory that I think gives why and how we came about going into building this model. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I am one of those kind of typical immigrant families. Though born here, my parents literally came to the States as my mom was pregnant with me. And everybody's a physician, the entire family. I think I have 12 to 15 cousins. Every one of them is some type of physician. So healthcare was a big part of my life. And I am actually a dual board certified surgeon. I finished up my colorectal training at University of Pennsylvania, but I always had a deep business background and interest. I remember I went to business school, and in my essay for business school, one of the things I wrote was, you know, a surgeon likes to pat himself that he is the hero of the world, but he always forgets, or she, that without a scalpel, they're basically useless. And so there is a major infrastructure that goes in play to allow the things that we want to work. I think Chris is coming back. Chris, I think you're connecting in. There you are. Chris, we got you.
Okay. Hi, technical difficulties, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So anyway, I just wanted to start out by, well, tell me what you said while I was gone.
I was just giving my own personal background.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And then I guess tell me a little bit more about how you came up with Eusoh, and I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
Did you
gladly.
include that in your intro?
Yeah, well, it was going. So ended up getting a business degree as well. And so I always had this kind of dual life in healthcare, where I was a practicing surgeon, but also very much involved in the intricacies of how healthcare delivery was being effectuated. And ultimately, one of the things that confounded me was how I could be practicing in a city like Los Angeles, one of the most affluent areas in the planet, yet on a daily basis, people were coming in and they were either still uninsured, they didn't understand their insurance, basically everything all of us can imagine with insurance in regards to healthcare. And so that sent me on a kind of private mission to really just question the model and is there not a better way? And this is over several years, just privately. I was downloading data off the CDC, doing statistical models, all the weird things us dorks and geeks love, but is fun for us. And then I kind of came upon this thing. Now, if we think about, I'm going to kind of sidetrack for a little, and I found that this really makes everything make sense. If we think about where tech has really been changing really big industries, where we look at it and be like, wow, they just broke up an entire industry, basically disrupt. And I'm reluctant to use that because everybody's throwing that out there. But if you really look at where that word disruption has happened, it's industries that thrived on allowing thousands of strangers to interact in very short bursts. And so
you're talking about like Uber.
Yeah, right. So you land in a foreign city. Exactly, right? So you land in a foreign city. You basically have to hitchhike, but we felt a little bit of sense and security if we picked up the phone, called a random operator who we didn't know, but they connected us with a stranger, probably didn't even speak our language, and they drove us somewhere. It's like hitchhiking, but there was a phone in the middle that made us feel better.
Right. When we think about that used to be shocking, getting into a stranger's car, but things have changed.
Yeah. And even hotels, right? Consider you go to a foreign city, you go to a random building filled with strangers, quite literally in a hall filled with them, sharing everything with them, but you felt good because there's a brand name on top of the building.
Right.
But what hospitality, what transportation was, we are going to connect thousands of strangers together to interact in very short bursts. Well, that's what insurance was. People don't realize that crowdfunding was actually invented by insurance. Literally, it was. And so the idea of insurance is, how do we coalesce thousands of strangers so that if there's a catastrophic thing that happens to anyone, or just very large expense that they otherwise couldn't afford, to be able to split that across thousands of people instantaneously and be done with it. That's what insurance does. And it makes sense. What happened over time was because of the way the financial structure was set up, and it had to do with just lack of technology. If I am a company and I need to collect money from tens of thousands of people, how do I do that? I can't call them. There was no telephone when they invented this in the 1600s. So the only good way to do that was collect money on an ongoing basis every month to make sure people are good for their money. And naturally what then happened is they said, well, we want to take a percentage of total funds collected. So if we're collecting $100 a month, we should be able to take 20% of that each month for ourselves. The second that happened, the incentive structure for the company giving us as the middle person completely flipped, right? Because now they want our monthly fee to get as high as possible because they're getting a percentage of that. And what that actually translates to in the end is they want us to be sicker. The more expensive our losses are, the higher our monthly premiums. And
that's fascinating. Ways. So they don't have an incentive for us to be healthy, right?
No, imagine if, for instance, you have a 0 loss month or 2 as a insurer. If you're taking a percentage of revenue and it's a 0 loss month, you're making 0, nothing. How are you existing as a business? You can't. The model can't do it. And so not that they purposefully are doing this to hurt us, but that's actually how the structure of the model was built. It's not intentional. It's not because they're bad people. It was, how do we collect this money? It was an actually very natural order. And I would argue that not until very recently, and that's where Eusoh comes in, could we change that model. And so the key things I wanted to be able to solve was, how do I bring thousands of people together, but make myself a company that's actually aligned with my members, and I have no reason to need costs to go up. And so case in point, last February, the actual share expense between our members was 6 cents on average, quite literally. It didn't matter to us because we take a flat subscription and that's the only money we touch. It never goes over that. And so I said, let's lock what we make as not a percentage of what's happening. So they're completely 2 different equations. Now my only thing to do is bring in more people by making a product that people like, but by giving the mass. As long as we have everyone in a system, then the rest is history.
That's awesome. So tell me how Eusoh differs from that. Is it just by setting aside the amount that the company needs, and then all the other medical costs are separate?
Yeah, so there's multiple parts, and we're going to get into it, obviously, that we are different. The foundational difference, which is the big one, is we split it up. So, and we're seeing this, right? So we're seeing this in a lot of companies these days. They say, we're going to be fully transparent on our prices. You buy a shirt, we're going to tell you what the button cost, what the zipper cost, what the cloth cost. You see that. Why can't we do that? We're doing that. So you pay us a subscription fee. That is the only money that goes in for us. We don't touch any of the money that flows between our users. The other thing, though, I wanted to do was make sure that there's zero fund. So we are a zero fund product that allows people to have a coverage through a community. And so because there's no money there, there's never an incentive for us to actually draw on. Am I breaking up?
No, you're using like startup talk. What's zero fund mean?
Yeah, so if you are with an insurer, because they're collecting money and storing it, they have this large capitated fund of money, which is actually,
gotcha.
That's their revenue stream. So, and I don't mean fund like funding by VCs. I mean, for insurance to work, you need to hold a captive fund of money. And basically at the end of the year, the larger that fund is, the better you have done as an insurer, which means the more you've collected and the less you've paid out. Consider what's happening to all of us in healthcare. What's happening to premiums? We're paying more and more.
Right.
And payouts are getting harder and harder for us. You see the personification of that disincentive model completely exaggerated in healthcare to the fullest extreme.
Right. It's a total mess.
It's a total mess. And it's because there's so many cooks in the kitchen at healthcare that it is getting exaggerated at a level that in most other industries, you don't see it that bad because there's only a few people that are messing with it. Now, because one of the things that also changed was, well, you could never do a zero fund model before at scale. You couldn't, the tech wasn't there. And so to do this quite literally was impossible until recently, right? So now we have Venmo, we have PayPal, Stripe, there's all these digital payment plans processing now. And so we can attach people to each other by the hundreds of thousands and draw micro payments as needed. Now, all of a sudden, we can bring hundreds of thousands of people together and to pool the funds only when the house goes on fire, not if, in case, maybe, never, possible, but keep giving us money. Completely different idea.
Yeah, that's why I think this is so brilliant. Because we're not, that means that we're not paying when our dogs we're only paying when our dogs get sick, not paying when they're not.
Exactly.
That's I think the big thing about pet insurance is that, I mean, having I don't know how much you heard about my diatribe about why it was important to me, but pet insurance is great, but in the back of my mind when I'm on it, or when I'm paying for it, it just feels like I mean, actually people in the group quite often say, is pet insurance worth it?
Yeah.
Well, worth it would mean, so you actually want your dog to get sick so that you feel good about the premiums that you paid? Like, it's totally messed up, right?
Well, an interesting thing on that. So sorry to jump in, Chris.
No,
so when we were deciding, we envisioned the model before we even had a market for it. So we actually designed, did the legal, we got involved with some major financial players to verify that we're not crazy. Right. Did all of that. We actually didn't even have a product yet. We didn't say, well, we had a product, not a market. That came later, identifying that, wow, we have this new way of doing things that has never been done. What should we do it first with? Pet came later. But so as we were figuring out, should we do pet, we actually spoke with a lot of vets. And what was interesting was real numbers. I'm not making this up because it's almost too ridiculous to believe. And multiple times I got the same exact numbers. A vet would tell me, listen, if you have cash, if you're a cash pay patient, basically uninsured, I will charge them $100. But if I know they have insurance, I'm going to charge them $500. Now think of the math for a second. Most pet insurance plans, you pay a 20% copay. So that means that if you're paying $500 to the vet, you're still paying $100 copay directly to the vet cash.
Right.
Exactly like the cash person. So you're no better off literally right off the beginning. And now as well, you're paying for a premium that accounts for that extra $400 that the vets have learned they could game the system with. Right. And so those are, and so again, what's happening there, the insurers aren't actually the corrupt ones. It's actually the vets, and they're not necessarily corrupt. It's just the system allows them. And guess what? Healthcare is so much worse.
Oh, it's way worse.
It's way worse. I'm not
$30,000
oh my God, you have
surgeries.
no idea. Oh, you have no idea. And that was part of the thing that bothered me. At a certain point, I was with a group and I was like, guys, this is insane what we're doing to people. This isn't good. And the more I got out and went on my own, and then the more I went through it, I was like, this is what the system is as a whole. And it is so endemic that the physicians aren't even aware that they're part of it anymore. And so.
And it can't feel good either being part of that system.
No.
Right?
No.
Were you a surgeon or what?
Yeah, I'm a colorectal.
Okay.
I have a practice out in Beverly Hills. I actually still see patients, but just a bit. It's more of a hobby now. It's not what I do it's not my primary living anymore. I do things because I was doing it for close to 10 years. I have a lot of patients that I have really good connections with. And so part of it is keeping that with them. And there's a part of it that I love. And my dream is that I could be a physician forever as a hobby and nothing else. Like literally have a completely free practice. That would be amazing.
Right.
I'm not there yet, but that is
you would have a free practice. That's really amazing.
It'd be wonderful.
That shows kind of who you are. That's awesome. So let's dig into the I guess the meat and potatoes of this. So
let's do it.
Did you talk about where the name Eusoh comes from?
Not at all. So one of the biggest, if I were to say there's a big criticism I get a lot, is people hate the name.
Yeah, I don't love it either. But.
Yeah, no one likes it. So I'll tell you. So look, picking names for companies is not easy, and that's not the excuse at all. Strategically, I actually wanted a challenging name. That's where it comes from. If what we're doing is truly different and new, it has not been done not only at the level of sophistication, but at the due diligence level we've done. So everything going on in the back end, you wouldn't believe how diligent we've been and meticulous in execution. Willis Re, which is the third largest reinsurance company in the world, has been through and through. I am not exaggerating or lying when I say 9 chief global actuaries of the biggest reinsurance companies in the world have meticulously dissected our model and came back and said, you guys have knocked this out of the park. And so on that execution, what my goal is to define a new space. And if we look historically at companies that have defined new spaces, it's typically with a strange name. So jacuzzi, people don't realize that's a brand name. It's not, right. Jacuzzi is not a term. Hot tub is the word. Xerox, is it Xerox or Xerox? But people Xerox. And so typically when you define a new space, it's not by some one-off fun name. It's by a name where people actually have to consider it just a bit, usually
that makes sense. I like that.
Yeah, and then the root of it is based off a word called eusociality, which in sociology is considered as defined the highest level of social organization. And I thought it was just appropriate given the context of the root and kind of what we're trying to do with it.
And then you can do cute little phrases like "you so cool."
Yes, and we have those ads, and they're a lot of fun. Yeah. We have some ads that are so inappropriate, and I'm a colorectal surgeon, and so when I tell you they're inappropriate because they're going down the route of what only a poop doctor could do. Oh, you may have said something. I couldn't hear you. I think your audio is muted. Or at least I'm not getting it.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah. So I went down to the next level in the house, and I left my AirPods upstairs, and it was connecting to my AirPods.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anyways, so we talked about the origination. It came from your ideas from healthcare. It came from kind of an Uber mentality of having just this shared space and micropayments, and I think not paying for things that you don't need to pay for, really, right? Being upfront and transparent about how the company works. So tell me what's covered and what's not covered.
Yeah, so for most part, we try to take a holistic approach so most things are covered, and that doesn't give you a direct answer that you could use. We put it clear as day on a chart, by the way, on our homepage. So if you go to the Eusoh.com and then go to, is it how it works? Sorry, it's right there. It'll say it. but I want to, in terms of explaining them, we didn't do the things that most people don't seem to like, which is declaw, cropping, and those things. One of the ones we do get questions on is neutering. We purposely actually as a team went over this and decided that neutering didn't make sense. And the reason it didn't make sense was because of what the USO model is, it's about a community share. So you and I are sharing together, as is with everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And because majority of people are actually these days adopting pets from shelters and rescues, those dogs come pre-neutered. And so we didn't think it was equitable to have a small subset of people being able to offload neutering costs to people that could never give neutering costs back to them. And so what we wanted it to be is things that people know that this could happen to my pet or your pet, and equitably, and that's what you're sharing on. We didn't think it would be fair for somebody to have something that someone else could never be part of and they're just blindly contributing into. And so that's why
we're trying to keep the risk about the same for everybody.
Not the risk, but the share. I would say the share. Yeah. And then because neutering isn't really a loss, but that, and then we had started with kind of just doing all routine flea meds and all those things. And we found that there was a couple subset of groups, they were just unloading just every possible routine type of med into the system. And we're like, this doesn't make sense. If everyone's buying flea and tick meds, there's no reason to be passing that buck around the table, because the only thing you do is actually make it more expensive. Because if I have to pay for it myself, I'm going to be pretty smart about how I buy my flea and tick meds. But if I know that I'm paying for it and everyone else is, and then I'm contributing into a pie, we're not going to be smart about that pricing.
Right. And then the whole system gets more expensive.
Yeah. And so flea and tick meds we took off, but vaccines we kept because we want to keep these dogs healthy, these cats healthy, both of them.
Plus, like that's also market based, because I was up in Washington the last couple of years, and you don't need flea meds up there typically.
Yeah.
There just aren't as many fleas.
Yeah.
So, how about pre-existing conditions?
So pre-existing conditions, we have a moderated group for both cats and dogs where people come in and they don't want to associate with others. They don't want to deal with the voting and dealing with kind of bringing people in. So on those specific groups, they're not permitted, but we have 27, I think, last count I had, other live groups in the system. And what we've done is a model where people get to self-associate. And so if you're in a group that knows you and wants to take on those costs, we let them choose that they want to knowingly take on those costs. We don't choose for them, but it's their choice. They can also say, hey man, we don't know you. And we don't think it's fair that you may come on here, offload this cost onto us, and then jump away 3 months later. We're not going to take you on. And so it's a simple voting choice by our members. And we know very well there's some groups that have literally said, we know this dog, it's our friend, we care for this dog, we're bringing them on. We'll take on that cost and burden.
So you're mentioning the concept of groups, which I don't think you've talked about yet. So tell me what a group is, and do we need to care about it, I guess?
You don't totally need to care. We have a majority of our members, I would say, well, not the majority, but our largest group is it's basically just kind of that moderated group where you just come in and it's run by.
That's called like USO dogs or USO cats, right?
Exactly. And it's run by a company. It's run by us. That's the truth of it. And so it's going to be as impersonal as a company group would be. And for some people, that's all they want. And then what we've also allowed is for people to self-associate in groups of their own. So for instance, for myself, I'm in a very large family and friend group that is only people that we know personally and we socialize with. And we have decided amongst ourselves that we really want to use USO really for just disasters. And so for standard stuff, we're not asking one another to chip in on that. So standard little vet stuff or things that happen, we're not trying to offload that off onto our sisters and brothers. And that's our own personal thing. But overall actually helps everyone else in the system because they're not chipping in on that too, because everybody in the system chips in on everyone's things. But there's a little bit of a pro rata based on which group you decide to associate with. So there's ones that are breed associated. We have a Bernese Mountain Dog group. We have a mixed breed dog group, a large breed, a small breed. There's a Jesus loving dog group. And so there's different groups in terms of how people want to associate. The point of the group—
best for you to pick the largest group there is? Or
no, not necessarily.
Oh, really?
I actually would say the opposite. So our groups aren't made for spreading the cost. So the spreading the cost is the whole system. You get the power of all of USO to spread your costs, but we do keep a small portion of the early parts to share within the groups. It's a small portion.
Explain that.
Yeah, so it runs algorithmically, so it's not like this constant number. But let's just imagine you put in $1,000 into the system because of a surgery. We're going to take $100 of that and split it within your group, and then take the other 900 and have that split within all of USO. So let's just imagine everyone in USO is throwing in $1.50 to help you out. Your own group members are going to throw in, 6 or 7 total. And the reason for that is, one of the things we have found is that there are certain people, and they exist, and they're a large enough number that they ruin it for the rest of us. They treat any and all insurance plans they're in with as a blank check. And there's no blank check. Even in insurance, that's our money. People forget insurance is crowdfunding. And so when they treat their cards like a blank check, we're all paying more and more each month. Right. And so the purpose of grouping is for people to have a sense and a reminder that I am actually negatively affecting other people when I just blindly spend on the system. The point isn't to just give you a free bank to charge things. The point of this is to protect you. That's why we use these things. And the reason people are reluctant is they feel like they're going to get abused. And so we have to build in ways not only to protect against what we as a company would do to you, but to protect you from what other users may want to do as well.
So we talked about what's covered and what's not covered. Pre-existing conditions. How about like different breed restrictions or?
No. Again, self-selection. There are some breeds, I'm not going to say them, but there are ones that we have noticed that some groups, look, there's been people who, and back to pre-existing, because this goes to that question. One of the things that we have found that is an option with USO that is not available with anything else is we have had members try to get in and said, look, I have a surgery coming up next month for hip dysplasia. Will you guys accept it and take over the charge on that? And invariably, everyone's like, no, why would we do that? You haven't even contributed into the system and you want to put $4,000 into it. Why? Doesn't make sense. And rightfully so, our groups basically say no. And what they do is they redo their questionnaire and say, okay, fine. Anything involved with this hip, that's on me, my fault for not being proactive and having protection before. But anything else that I don't know about that's not related to that, I'd like to start being proactive going forward. Will you help me for everything else? And it's almost universally they get in. And so what they've done is said, look, if anything comes under the hip, I no longer will put that into the system. And we as a company verify that. So when these charges come in, we look to see if it matches what they promised their groups. And so we have taken people where right now in the world of insurance, it's binary. It's either pre-existing, you're out, no, there's nothing left for you, or you're perfectly healthy. But we're giving people an option in that middle. The things that you were, I'm sorry, but a little bit irresponsible for not being protected in front of now are trying to figure out what to do. You're going to deal with that, but there's still other stuff you don't know about. And there's an option now where people are like, look, for the things you still don't know about that are unexpected, let's do it. Let's protect one another. And that goes to breeds. So, and then in certain breeds I've seen are trying to form amongst themselves. But there are, I mean, I don't like to put names on bad breeds and stuff, but there's some breeds that I think members have been a little bit more wary about trying to share equally because they know it'll never be equal for them. So yeah.
So let's talk about, and I think this is interesting, but let's talk about how much someone would be reimbursed for stuff.
Yeah. So we try to keep, because the model is so different, it is, and there's a bit of a steep learning curve in the beginning. But I think there's a little part where once people get it, it makes sense. We try to keep the rest as similar or analogous to kind of what you would find in insurance. So we can't use the same terminology because we aren't in insurance, but for what an insurer has as a deductible, which the industry standard is basically $250, we have an initial out of pocket. And then essentially everything going forward after everyone meets that first initial out of pocket, you get an 80% reimbursement for what you spend. That's where it starts, right? And then there's a part that Chris wants me to get into, and we will. But so let's just start off. You spend $100 at the vet. If you've already met your out of pocket, you're going to get $80 back from the community, $20 again on you. Again, the reason for that, the money's not coming from us. There's no flow of funds ever from USO to the members or members to USO back to members. We don't touch that money. So it's not because we're trying to protect our own money. These are behavioral things. And you have to realize that there are people who are like, I am going to spend capriciously, I'm going to spend blindly. And that 20% actually is enough to put somebody on check in terms of how they're blindly spending other people's money.
Right. But alternatively, and this is the exciting thing for somebody who's a little bit more, I guess, cautious about what they're spending money on, you can, I mean, you can find out what you'll pay out, right?
Yeah.
So you have a list of what certain procedures will cost, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that you have that the national average is say $5,000 for a procedure. If I shop around and can get somebody to pay to do the procedure for 5,000 or less, then it's covered at 100%, right?
Yes.
Which I think is awesome, because that's when you're actually saving lots of money then.
Yes. So what we did was, and this was from one of my own, one of my pet peeves with healthcare, was provider networks. It never made sense to me. And the reason it didn't make sense was because the idea was perverse. If at any point I'm getting too historical or kind of deep, just stop me. Because
it's awesome, because you to have this kind of access to a CEO over such an exciting product is really exciting. So I'm happy to hear about it.
Well, thank you. So if it is, just stop me. So the idea of provider networks, when it first started, the idea was, look, there's all there's physicians out there. I go to healthcare again because it actually makes more sense to people, because the networks really affect us there. So it used to be, we're going to tell you which doctors are good. Insurers at one point in the early stages actually helped you beyond just money. They were supposed to be a source of information. They were supposed to be a guide. These are the procedures you should do, not what it's become today. These are the procedures we'll cover because they're cheaper, right? We won't do the MRI, but we'll do the CT even though you need the MRI. It used to be, hey, this is what you need. And it also used to be, these are the good physicians. These are the good providers. They're in our network. And what it later translated into, these are the providers who we can pay less to because they'll take it. And so what it ended up happening was this zero-sum game, or this binary, again, model where if you use the provider where we want you to use, we'll give you something. And if you don't use our providers, we give you zero, all or nothing. And that bothers me, because if I'm sick and I need a procedure, or my dog or cat is sick and needs a procedure, does it really matter who I go to? It should not at all. It should matter about that procedure. And we did an analysis, a very deep one. We collected data for several months across the country, and we actually found that the variance on costs across vets is not as wide as you would believe. There are a few outliers, but they're few and far between. We actually compared zip codes as well: Gramercy Park in New York, 90210, San Francisco, to small places that people like to make fun of and probably shouldn't have anyway, in different parts of the country. And the variance is not as big as you think. And so what we proposed is, look, if you need a procedure, I don't care who you go to, as long as you are getting it at what 90% of our members are getting it at. And so if Chris or Allen or Ari or anyone else, Rome is sitting here, basically if 90% of our people have to get something done and it's $100, we're gonna reimburse you basically at that $100 range, no matter who you see. But if you go to someone and they're charging $700, we're gonna give you the 100, just like 90% of our users would have got as well, and they would be sharing with you equally. Does that make sense? And then what you're talking about is if you shop around, and so we made that list available. You could go onto our website and see what the prices should be. We didn't make these prices up. These are actual real pricing that we data mined, and now has been updated every night. It re-updates and gives us averages of real pricing that is being submitted into the system. None of it.
So with that example, how much was it? 700?
No. So if it was 100, well, yeah. So if it was 100,
the guy that's spending,
oh, I told you,
that's overspending, right? So how much is he being reimbursed?
Yeah. So we had this recently. Somebody went to get something done for oral surgery for their dog, and the average in the country is around $250, and their special provider charged $750. And so we actually went and we cross-verified. We actually went and pulled more data because we wanted to be sure before we said, well, you're kind of an outlier. And all the data we found online confirmed what our suspicion was. And so I have to look at the exact, but we give a variance, basically kind of what you would say is the standard deviation, around 250. And then that difference overage, that they paid as a concierge practice, that difference is on them. We're not going to have our membership, who 90% of them, they're paying that 250, have to share on that higher cost. because that individual wasn't being price conscious. Now, to what you said is, let's say the 250 is the normal and you go to that person and spend 200, you are price conscious and really get to that lower end, we're going to reimburse you 100%, not even the 80, because you're being smart with everyone's money.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. How about a waiting period?
Yeah, so we do. So the
that?
standard, no, we haven't yet.
Okay.
So the standard in the country has actually 0 to 15 days waiting period. We are the strictest on that, and I'm very upfront about that, and I'm not shy about it. And I also don't excuse myself for it, because again, it's not our money that I'm protecting. It's our members.
Right.
And when you do an analysis, the reality is that the odds of somebody coming in and trying to game our members, especially in the beginning, as this is an early startup and they're like, let's see what we can get away with, is much higher than the chance that we're going to have a member and within 30 days they have a catastrophic illness happen on their animal that was unexpected. So to me, the odds of me having our members get screwed by having a short waiting period was much higher than what'll happen.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so it's 30 days. Most companies are doing 15 to 0. So we are the longest. But I'll tell you, look, if somebody is in our system and something happens and we really believe them that this is unexpected and happened to them, I would urge you to let us know. And just, yeah, like our goal isn't not to help animals, it's to actually protect our users and why it's that.
Cool. Let's talk about actual costs. So
sure.
Dogs and cats are the same, right?
Dogs and cats, everything's the same right now. Well, in what sense? Like the actual average amounts?
The $17.
No, it's different. So the subscription is the same. You're right. So the subscription is the same.
Okay.
The sharing happens. The cat members are sharing with other cat members, excuse me, and dog members are sharing with other dog members.
Right. But the monthly is the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you happen to know, like, typically what people are actually ending up spending, both in Eusoh dogs as well as Eusoh cats? Like the 17 plus however much over the last few months?
Yeah, Ari, what was the average for cats? For dogs, it's falling at about, on average, around $8-ish per month on the sharing side.
8.
Yeah.
So that's 17 plus 8. So $25.
Yeah, and for cats, it's been about $4 on average for sharing. When we combined cats and dogs together for the last year, it was $4.72. But you can't really use that because cats and dogs are actually, they're different in terms of cost.
Yeah.
So dogs was falling about 8 or 9. That $48 max, we never even got close to with any of our members. Not even.
That is amazing. So basically you get, I mean, in a nutshell, you get basically equivalent service and coverage of pet insurance for at least 50% of the cost, right?
That was the goal. At
most. Like, that's incredible.
And it makes sense if you think back to that original story I told you that multiple vets were telling me, right? They're actually just, the premiums are on a surcharge that doesn't need to be there.
Right.
And so if we could get people to trade on that cash basis, but allow them to split it on the idea of that scaling basis, it should be a much cheaper model.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about, you said that you spoke to some finance guys about whether the system works. Yeah.
So when I think there's a whole story in of itself there, and literally for a whole thing, but when I'm trying to think which parts to give you so I don't bore you. Well, so when I came up with this idea, actually one of our first advisors is actually the CEO of Clutter. And I was introduced to him and somebody said, you need to talk with Ari Mir.
What's Clutter?
Clutter is a self-storage company that is just blowing up. They're really big right now. Yeah.
Is that the one that'll just, like, you can just give them a bin?
They come to your house. They're pretty amazing. They actually will come to your house. They do the packing, but they take photos of each item they take and it's inventoried on the site. And then they store it. They take it. And then if you need it, you go on the website. It's like, I just need this one item. And they come drop it off in the next day. So you're not going to the storage facility yourself and you have an inventory of what you need and they come and bring it back and forth.
That works for Manhattan. I wonder if anyone else needs it though.
LA is doing really well. No, so they're doing
It
really
is?
well. He is.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
he's pretty happy guy right now.
Awesome.
So I had somebody introduced us. I hadn't met him, and I ran the idea by it, and he's like, you should do this. This makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, I talked about it with a few different friends of mine, and the key one was back in my days when I was in business school, I had consulted for a risk management firm, and the head of that company had retired and moved to Australia. And so I called him and I said, I have to run something by you. And he said, that's insane. And he had been in the insurance world his whole life. He's like, let me call you back. And we're very close. He called me back with another guy. And we went through it through and through for about 6 weeks. And they called me one day, like, we think you're onto something. We at first were pessimistic. And the more we went through this, the more this made sense. And so really went through a lot in terms of what it means to do this. And at that point kind of met with a legal team and I said, I want to do this, but I want to do it legally. I don't want to launch it and then find out all the things I did wrong and get fines. So you tell me what I need to do and these are the parameters and I will build a product that doesn't break the law. And so we know at some point people will question it and we have everything built out so we could show them what we've done to abide by everything that has been dictated to us in terms of doing this the right way. And then ultimately took that to the financial institutions and said, look, we have this crazy product. Do you guys agree with our models? And so they went through the modeling and came back and said, you guys have built something uniquely different that we think will revolutionize the industry.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it goes to, so we capped it at $48 a month. To be honest, that the modeling showed that it could be slightly less than that, but I was nervous. So I myself made it a little higher to give a buffer.
Wait, so 48, I thought it was 65.
So it's 17 a month as a subscription, right? But
Gotcha.
but you put a $48 deposit and that deposit's refundable. And so
Okay.
if you are a good member after a year, at any time after a year, you get your 48 back. That's just your promise to the rest of the members that if you jump ship, that you're good for that month that you had promised you'd be there for. And so they had said it actually could be slightly lower, not that much more. And I was nervous, so I made it higher. And we built out what is the odds that it would ever be more than that? What happens if all these dogs get sick at once? And all the questions that we actually get quite frequently. All of that was modeled out with these. And that number is actually reflective with the Allen Kamrava little buffer of what is basically a 95% confidence interval that we shouldn't ever.
The AKB?
See that. Yeah, there's a little buffer in there. It's really tiny, but it made me feel slightly better. It did.
So just to go over that one more time. So I think we've talked about a lot, but I think probably most people are just concerned about cost and coverage, right?
Yeah.
So at the very least, people can expect to spend this $17, which goes towards the company. And then the sharing, what do you call the sharing amount? Does that have a specific name?
No, the sharing amount, the contribution amount. Yeah.
So contribution, so you've got the 17 plus contribution, right? And 17 contribution you said was, what did you say, $7 or something for dogs right now?
It's been on average about $8 for dogs, 8 and change.
Okay. So 25, so we can expect to spend $25 at the least. And you have a guarantee that we'll never spend more than 65 per month, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, you could expect to spend $17 at the very least, up to 65, because we could technically we could have a zero.
Yeah.
It won't happen, but we could. But I mean, look, February, the average spend was 6 cents. So
wow.
Yeah, and so that was back then. We were actually only $10 a month. So it was $10.06 for most of our members that month.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we even when people join, you can attach a credit card, a debit card. You actually can do a checking account, but we brought that in. At first, it was like you could do the checking account up front, and it made the registration process so painful with checking accounts because people would join Friday night, and the bank would have to approve, and it wouldn't come to like Monday or Tuesday. So you could attach a bank account later, just because it made the whole process thing. But even so, if you do credit and debit, there's transactional fees. We don't take that. That's the banks. So we literally, the only thing we touch is that 17. Nothing else that's going through that ever comes through our bank account ever. It doesn't even hit our account and flow somewhere else. We're out of it. We're just helping make everything happen. We audit. So we've kicked out a few members We had people who had lied and said their animals are perfectly healthy, and then whoop, lo and behold, on day 32, they submitted a surgery. And so it was very clear. And so we pulled the vet notes, and it was very clear they knew even before coming on use, so they had a surgery and they were trying to find a way to offload it.
Okay.
And that's not okay. It's not. The whole point of this is transparency and honesty.
So let's talk about that. So is there a, I guess like an ideal client or ideal person or ideal pet for Eusoh, as opposed to maybe ones that aren't?
Look, I mean, let's put it in this way. Somebody always says, well, why don't you just build a system only for sick dogs? Okay. What do you think the costs for that are going to be? If 100% of the dogs are sick, is anyone in that model actually saving money, or now they're all blindly spending? There's this old economic adage they would teach, or adage, sorry, that they would teach students when they were kind of talking about this, was if everyone's having wine, then I'll have the tomahawk. And the idea was that if you're going to dinner with a group of people and you look around at the table and notice that everybody has this nice glass of wine around, or this really nice appetizer, you're like, well, if I'm splitting this bill,
right,
why am I going to get the salad? I'm going to get the tomahawk. It's true, and it's true human behavior, and it actually makes a lot of sense. It's logical. It's the same thing with this. It is, right? So if we build a system where everyone is just passing a buck around the table, that buck actually goes up in price. So look, we don't select who goes in and out of the system, and that's membership driven, but ultimately you want to balance. And what you do want to balance of is actually healthier people that look, the most part of having a plan like these, for all plans, forget just dogs, whenever you build a system like this, is truly actually for the unexpected. It doesn't really make sense to do it for the known. That's why, quite honestly, dental insurance never made sense to me, but that's a whole other topic. But you're going to get your teeth cleaned, or you're going to get eyeglasses. That's why. Anyway, so I can't tell you what the ideal animal is, but I will tell you that for us, ideally, to make this work for you, we need to hopefully make sure that by and large, most people are not having bad things happen to their animals. Otherwise, we're just passing money around the table, and it wouldn't make sense for you to be here.
Right. So that said, let's say I've got a sick dog or an older dog. Like, does pet insurance sometimes make more sense?
The reason I'm laughing is, well, if you were to price the premium on an older dog, it's sometimes $200 a month.
No, I know. I've asked a little bit today, and people were saying for healthy dogs, $70 a month, or there's all kinds of. But at the same time, let's say that I've got an older dog. Like, a lot of people in our community will have rescue dogs with lots of problems and stuff. I mean, does it make sense? Yeah,
I'll tell you this. It really comes down to, and that's where it comes back to the group and why we have these groups. It makes sense if you make a commitment to your fellow group members that I'm part of this system, period. So I have this dog, and maybe the poor soul is on their last couple of years, and then I'm going to have another baby child or furry child, another baby kid, and I'm going to bring this one in too. Well, then now you're actually sharing. It's the longevity of your membership that actually, it's about equity, right? And the only way to be equitable, ultimately, it'll never be perfect, but it's for all of us to intend to be in the platform together for an equal amount of time.
Right. Cool.
Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. So basically, I guess I mean I would say for people to at least check into it, right? And then Eusoh dogs, you can work with your company to see whether they're confirmed or not.
Yeah. One of the other things we found. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, when I first heard about you guys, I was thinking about doing a Dudes with Dogs group.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, there's the responsibility of saying yes or no to people, which I'm not sure that I want to do as a community leader. I'd rather you guys do that.
There's two ways to do it, by the way. So what we did was, I wanted it to be self-selected so that it's not us as a company. I was actually very reluctant in the beginning to make the company moderated group, but I got a lot of advice, and rightfully so. I mean, it's our largest group, so people clearly naturally wanted that people would want that, and they did. So sure. But look, ultimately the voting in the groups is simple majority, and everyone could abstain. And so if there's 100 people in the group and only 3 people vote, we take whatever the simple 50% plus 1 is. So if 4 people vote and it's 2 and 2, that's not a pass. And so you potentially could say, guys, I'm building the Dudes with Dogs group and I'm never voting. It's up to you guys. So I never get the blame as the moderator.
Oh, that makes sense, maybe. Yeah, I'll still have to
I leave that
yeah,
to,
I'm gonna think about that.
But I would
But
say
in the meantime,
yeah.
if you guys sign up, I'm talking to people who might be watching this right now. Just sign up as Eusoh Dogs or Eusoh Cats, and then the administration of the group is done by Eusoh themselves. It's not, some weird people that you don't know. It's going to be by the company themselves. So, or if you're excited about breed specific groups, there are some breed specific groups. Go ahead and take a look through some of those. And if you want to apply to those, go ahead and apply to those. But then again, some of the responsibility for management is done by someone that you're probably not going to know immediately. So
and the other one was the initial, look, when you build these things, you have this mission, this vision. And one of my visions that failed was that people were just going to join groups and it would form very quickly. And actually 2 of my employees very early said, or staff or team, sorry, they said very early, like, Allen, you have a very large network of colleagues. And so your idea of how quick it is to form a group of people is very warped and not realistic. And so what we do tell people is who want to form groups is get in from Eusoh Dogs. It's hard to move you from other groups you've committed to, but if you get into Eusoh Dogs and bring 10 people in, and then you guys tell us all, we want to coalesce into a separate group, we can move you then. So you don't get stuck waiting for that. But we try to keep groups to a size of at least 10, because otherwise there's reasons for that. And it's multi-layered. But
but doesn't seem to be like a huge benefit, right? Besides kind of the touchy-feely part of it.
I would argue your costs would potentially be cheaper.
Oh.
If you form a group of true people that you know, you're going to treat each other better than the way strangers are going to treat one another. That's just the way nature is.
Interesting. Human nature.
Yeah. That's a big part of this. It is.
Yeah. Well, that's what's exciting about it is I think we're getting back to the basics, I think, in social media and all kinds of stuff. Like, treat people with respect, treat people fairly, get away from this company is screwing you over.
And we, that's part of it. There's full transparency, not only on every item that everyone's contributing to, but you could actually see within your groups who is taking the most money and who's contributed the most money.
Ooh, interesting.
And so look, it's the same idea with Airbnb and Uber and Lyft and all of these. You get to rate your drivers as your passengers. Now, we're not letting you rate other sharers. We're giving you info and insight into their usage of your dollar.
Yeah.
And so the whole goal is, look, there's going to be people like, well, I don't like that. I don't want people knowing that I'm overspending. Well, yeah, good. Then maybe this isn't the right product for you.
Maybe you don't overspend then.
Yeah, sorry. That's how you look. The way corruption happens is when there's no transparency. And so if we could build the most transparent possible system, it's the way you make things better for everybody.
Do you want to check with Ari and see if there's any questions anybody had?
Ari, any questions that have been coming through? He's shaking his head no.
Oh, wait, yeah,
oh, somebody came. Yeah. I can't see it.
They lose their pet. Do they automatically drop from the group?
Yeah.
They're required to stay.
No, you could drop. So yeah, if your pet unfortunately passes away, and this actually just happened this month, unfortunately for someone, and we sent her a card. No, you get to drop out and we refund the deposit.
So what haven't we covered? Do you have any questions for me as a I've been doing this community stuff for almost 6 years, so I'm excited about this because not only for me personally, but there's so many people that I think are just like me who have just been kind of the way I introduced this topic recently was like, do you suffer from low grade anxiety from not having a financial plan in place? And I totally did. Like, like I told you, I had pet insurance for a while and then dropped that, and you're just kind of hoping your dog doesn't get sick, which sucks, you know. And then if they do, you're relying on a GoFundMe or relying on having a large credit card capacity, you know. So I'm excited about this product because I feel like it's somewhere in the middle.
It's one of the things that's on one of the videos on the website. I said, look, we're not trying to make it free. It's not free. It's not free. I'm just trying to make it what it should be, the fair price. And there's going to be a fee. There's going to be a cost to have a financial product to protect your animal, yourself, anything you want to protect. There should be a fee for that, but it should be what the fee should be and not something else with all the surcharges. I will say this, you know, when we've built this, especially when you first start, you get a lot of kind of people reaching out, oh, we want to help you, we're going to do this and all that. And it starts to become noise, but you have been amazing. When we met there was a convention that we actually met at, I was just blown away because there was a sincere, genuine person behind it. I never felt like you were selling me on something. You're just being yourself. And
well,
that's why I wanted to work with you. I mean, not even work with you, but to do this. This is the first time I've done this.
Well, I mean, this is what I do. I believe really strongly in my community. You know, pets are super meaningful to us. I mean, they're meaningful to everybody, but especially in LGBT lives. You know, there are kids, and so it's, hey, Rome.
He says hi.
Hey. So yeah, so this is really, really important to me, and if I can help the people in my community feel more comfortable and have less anxiety and sleep better at night, knowing that if they have a problem, that they've got, you know, a plan in place, I think that's amazing. And I think your product's amazing as well. And so I look forward to working together more with you.
Thank you. We just went live with our mobile app. Like, no, it's not there. Don't go yet. It's there, but there's a bug.
What's that gonna do?
We just went live with our mobile app this week, but we haven't been pushing it yet because there is a bug that we're not happy with yet. So let us push the next update. Look, this is
what can you do on it? What's it for?
The same things. It's just so that it makes it easier to do on your mobile than it would be. Well, you showed it to me, so I thought you meant to say it. It's just our website is mobile. Our web is mobile responsive web, which means that if you were to go to it on a browser, it looks like an app. But people are talking rather have an app, which I personally don't know why people want apps. So, but we've made it. So we will announce when the updates.
I don't know. Apps are okay, but I think
I don't get it. I don't.
It's a lot of extra development. It's a lot of extra development work. Like, how often?
Well, I don't know why people will want an app on their phone. Like, just go to a website, but people want.
I have way too many apps as it is.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it, but okay. But we'll announce when it's ready. Don't you can actually download it now, but it's buggy. So just give us another 24 to 48 hours.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's probably it. I don't think I have anything else. Sign up would be just to go to the link that we provided. You're giving us a deal, right? So 2 months free.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, you negotiated very well for your members.
Yeah, so
you're smart.
No, it means a lot that you guys are partnering with us.
Yeah.
So cool.
All
right. Well. We'll talk to you soon, I guess.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
First time.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.